Picture, if you will, a 14-year-old in 1916 bent over a wooden table that's about the size of a kitchen door, pressing damp sand with his thumbs to raise a ridgeline. Nearby, an instructor crouches, pointing first to a contour map pinned to the wall, then back to the sand. That line is this hill. If you can't read the hill on paper, you can't survive it in the field. These boys, well, they were not yet soldiers, but the world around them was being devoured by a war that had already claimed millions, and the men preparing the next generation understood something most classrooms did not, that survival begins with reading the ground beneath your feet. This is the story of how topographic sand tables became one of the most powerful yet under-celebrated teaching tools of the First World War era, and why the craft skills they pass down still matter to anyone who values fieldcraft, preparedness, and, honestly, the ancient art of knowing where you stand. The language of terrain, reading the earth before you walk it. Long before GPS, soldiers navigated by paper maps and, really, the intelligence of their own eyes. But topographic maps, those dense webs of contour lines and elevation numbers, are, let's be honest, cognitively demanding. For most young recruits in 1914, translating flat symbols into three-dimensional tactical space was nearly impossible without experience. Youth organizations influenced by Baden-Powell's scouting movement addressed this challenge with elegant directness. They built the landscape in miniature. Sand tables allowed instructors to construct scaled physical replicas of actual terrain. A hill became a hill you could press your finger into. The river valley your unit would need to cross was right there, tangible and real. The table didn't just teach geography, it taught how geography kills and, crucially, how it saves. Into the trench. The sensory world the sand tables were training for. To understand why terrain literacy mattered so absolutely, you have to, well, stand inside the reality these soldiers were being prepared to enter. The Western Front stretched more than 700 kilometers, a labyrinth of mud, timber, and human misery, pressed into the chalk and clay of northern France. The smell hit you first, waterlogged earth, rotting wood, unwashed bodies, the chemical bite of cordite. The sound was a constant education in threat, the whistle of incoming shells, the crack of a sniper's round, the groan of timber as a dugout wall shifted overnight. Water was everywhere, and drinkable nowhere. Men collected rainwater in canvas sheets, rationed a single canteen across a full day's labour. Shelter was improvised with, honestly, savage ingenuity. Corrugated iron, bent into low roofs, gas sheets repurposed as ground cover. Camouflage was not a theory, but a survival instinct. Paint your helmet, drape hessian over your coat. Never strike a match in sight of the enemy line. Every one of these skills depended on a foundational competency, knowing where you were and what the ground would do to you or for you. That is what the sand table was building long before any of these boys heard a shell. Fieldcraft in miniature was a hands-on education. Boys were not handed a completed model and told to study it. Instead, they received a topographic map and were asked to build what it described, pressing terrain into being with their own hands. This process, translating symbol into substance, really forced a depth of engagement that passive study simply never could. The materials were simple: sand, clay, river gravel, sawdust mixed with glue for forested areas, and mirror glass for water features. Unit markers were placed and moved to simulate tactical situations, turning the table from a static model into a live planning environment. It was, all at once, a museum, a classroom, and a rehearsal stage. The tactical thinking behind the table was transformative. What sand table training produced at its best was a habit of reading landscape not as scenery, but as strategic fact. The high ground dominates observation. The reverse slope conceals movement. The stream crossing is a point of vulnerability. The sunken road is a covered route. Baden-Powell had written about terrain reading in Scouting for Boys as one of the primary competencies of a useful man in the field. The sand table formalized that instruction and made it replicable across thousands of scout troops and cadet corps. By 1917, topographic model building was embedded in military training doctrines on both sides of the Atlantic. The living legacy of the sand table endures. It did not disappear with the armistice. The Normandy landings, for example, were rehearsed over detailed scale models of the Norman coastline. In the planning cells of modern military units and in the field exercises of cadet organizations, the same logic persists. You understand terrain by building it, touching it, reasoning over it. For the modern bushcrafter, the lesson is direct. The ability to read a topographic map fluently requires no technology, no battery, no signal. And the method still works. Just get a map, find some clay, and build what you see. You'll find the landscape comes alive in a way that no screen ever quite achieves. That 14-year-old pressing sand into a ridgeline in 1916 was doing what humans have done since the first hunter scratched a map beside a fire, trying to understand the ground before having to walk it, live on it, survive it. The skills the war demanded, shelter, water, navigation, camouflage, terrain intelligence, are the same skills that have kept people alive since long before the word soldier existed. The sand table is a forgotten technology, but its lesson is permanent. Know the ground. Know it before you need it. Know it in your hands, not just in your head. If this episode spoke to you, then you are exactly who Fieldcraft Chronicles exists for. Subscribe now and join a community that takes history, skills, and preparedness seriously. Share this video with anyone who loves the outdoors, values self-reliance, or wants to understand how ordinary people survived extraordinary times. New episodes drop every week. The ground is waiting, and now you know how to read it.